listening to Package Your Genius, a conversation designed to give you clarity on your calling and serve as a catalyst for your career. I'm your host, Amanda Miller Littlejohn. Hey PYG fam, I'm trying something new today. Actually, I am trying it as a project for the month of June. I am setting out to record a podcast a day for the whole month of June. So these likely will not be super long episodes. They will be of the moment, what's on my mind, not particularly polished, or maybe they will be. I have no idea, but I'm excited to challenge myself. I was inspired by a podcast that I've recently started listening to called Mom is in Control by Heather Chauvin, and she actually is doing a podcast a day for the entire year of 2019, which I find to be a bit ambitious, even for me, even as the high achiever that I am. I'm definitely not trying to commit for a year, but who knows? We'll see how it goes. This may become something that I get hooked on. Who knows? So one of the reasons that I really thought was cool and just inspired me to do this was listening to an interview that Heather did about why she was actually doing this podcast today in 2019. And she said that when you force yourself to come on and share daily, it forces you to be real, authentic, to let go of your own perfectionism, to really be honest, frankly, about what's on your heart and what's on your mind, because you have to keep showing up. And it's not like you have to come up with content or teach all the time, but you really just have to share what's on your heart. And I think it gives you a better chance to connect with your audience and let them see the real you. And so I put a lot into the podcast. Oftentimes I rack my brain and think about what was relevant from my week to share, and I make notes and I try to make the podcast episodes as professional as possible. But to be honest with you, sometimes I do feel like that gets in the way of me just sharing myself. And one of my goals for this year is just to kind of loosen up and let my hair down and show you guys the real me. Or as my son would say, you know, he has a nickname for me. He calls me Lamo, which already, look at me opening up and sharing personal stuff. So Lamel is LAML. It stands for Legendary Amanda Miller Littlejohn. And it is my kids' nickname for me. They're so awesome and so affirming. But one of my sons said, you know, you should show them Lamel. Like, you should let them see Lamel like you let us see her. And so hopefully I can let you guys in on Lamel so you can experience the Lamel power, as they would say. So yeah, that's the goal for June, to produce an episode each day. And I'm actually literally sliding in with only a few hours to spare on June 1st. I just decided I was going to do it and make it happen. So wish me luck on that end. What I wanted to talk about on my first, I guess, daily episode of the month was, and if you hear, I don't know if you can hear that, but there are kids screaming outside in the street, which is something you're going to have to get used to on these daily episodes, because you're just going to have to get it where I can fit it in. Usually I record during the day when it's super quiet outside and nobody's here, but clearly people are turning up in the street. So let's roll with it. But a few weeks ago, I decided to buy a bike for my son, Connor. And he had been riding this, like, you know, El Cheapo dirt bike that I got from Walmart, you know, standard kid stuff. He's a kid, so wanted something sturdy, something he could beat up, something he could learn to ride his bike on, because he actually didn't know how to ride. He had like a kiddie bike with training wheels before that, but this was like his first real bike. But anyway, he outgrew it, and I wanted to get him something new because he loves to ride bikes. And because I have a fairly new bike, I wanted to get him a bike from like a bike shop, not Target or Walmart. So I've been looking around, searching for something, and hadn't found anything until one day I saw this woman riding her bike with her kids following behind her. And they looked to be about the same age, tweenish. And so I asked her, where did she get the bikes? And she told me REI, which I didn't even think about that, but duh, they have tons of bikes. Long story short, went to REI, checked out the bikes, called myself looking at the older youth bikes when the salesperson told me that because my son's legs are so long, he actually would fit better on an adult bike, and had us try out some of the extra small and small frames. I ended up settling on a small because I wanted him to have a couple of years to grow into it and get some use out of it, because these bikes are pretty expensive. And so, when he tried the bike on and sat on it and everything, it looked okay. His legs fit perfectly, but his arms were a little short, and I figured, okay, it'll be fine. But 2 weeks later, when it was finally time to pick this bike up, because I had to order it and they had to assemble it and all of this stuff that I guess goes into the process of purchasing a bike from REI, we go to pick it up, and the day we actually pick it up, I had Connor get on it, and it just looked so big. Oh my God. I was like, I think I made a mistake. Like, this is just too big. And I have to give you some background. So Connor is my wild child, and if you have kids or siblings, you know that everybody has a different personality. Kids the same age or the same size, like if they have different personalities and are kind of, driven by different motors, the same tool in one's hand could be a weapon in the other's. And so I was thinking, well, if this were Logan, it would be fine, because Logan is super careful and he takes his time and he almost has anxiety and he's nervous and he just is very careful. But Connor is not careful. He's fearless. He's the child who's been to the emergency room with broken limbs, and, he's the one who would just like dart out in front of a car. Like I'm afraid. Right. So we go outside to try the bike out, and just, I'm like, oh, I want you to ride around the block and just show me how you handle this new enormous bike. He gets on, and he was wobbling, and the steering front wheels going all over the place. And like, we were in this really dense urban area. We live in Washington, D.C. So as you can imagine, that's not what you want your child to be doing. You don't want them to be wobbling and veering and potentially going off the road into incoming traffic. So I got super nervous. I go back inside, and I'm like telling the sales guy, where are your elbow pads, your knee pads, your wristbands? I need all the protective gear I can find, because this child will be the one that will like take this huge fast bike and go careening down a hill and into a tree or into a person or into a dog or into a car. And it just made me so fearful. And so the salesperson kind of was like, if you're going to buy anything, just buy a new helmet, because that's the most important thing. Knees are going to get scuffed. Elbows are going to get skint. Like it happens. You can't really prevent that. Like, everyone falls. But if you're worried about safety, the helmet is the most important thing. So kind of was like, all right, let me breathe, buy this new helmet. We've got this new bike. He doesn't really seem like he is big enough for it. But I bought it. We have it. They assured me I could return it. I had a whole year to return it if something goes wrong, or if I don't like it, or if I want to exchange it. And so I figure, it took a lot to get the bike. We had to wait a few weeks to get it. So let's just roll with it for now. And, maybe he won't get out and ride around the neighborhood for a while. We'll just start slow. So that was the plan. Super nervous though, filled with anxiety, because again, this is a child who I have had to take to the emergency room because they were doing crazy things like, trying to skip a bar on the monkey bars and ended up slipping, falling, miscalculating, and breaking an arm. So that's the child we have. So go home, a couple days pass, and I'm trying to calm myself because, again, I had watched him get on the bike, wobble, clearly couldn't handle it. Clearly this is a larger machine than he's used to. And because it's a nicer grade of a bike, it's faster, right? Like it's got fancy brakes. I mean, it's just a really nice bike. And so I'm nervous, but I figured, okay, how can we break this down and make it manageable for him, for me to kind of soothe my brain and just like calm me down? And so I decided that I would take him to this parking lot that's near our house. It's an elementary school, and it's actually the parking lot where I taught both boys how to ride a bike, from zero. Like, how do you balance? How do you put your first foot on the pedal? How do you turn the wheel? How do you steer? How do you brake? It's a fabulous empty parking lot on the weekends, and it's always great to just kind of go and not be bothered. There's cones there. There's light poles that you can kind of go around and create little obstacle courses to help you learn to ride. So I said, let's go back to basics, go back there, even though you know how to ride a bike. Let's do some drills. Let's kind of get your comfort level up. Let me see how you can improve your steering and just learn how to handle this new bike. And we went to the parking lot, and can I tell you that within 20 minutes, he was riding the bike like a pro, where when we left the store initially, he was wobbly and unsure and just really making me nervous and making me regret that I had gone out on a limb to get this new thing that was a little bit too big for him. Within 20 minutes of practice in that parking lot, he was riding it like he'd had it for years. And, we did some drills, and I had him practice steering and braking and turning and just getting comfortable with how to ride. And literally within the 20 minutes, it was like he'd always had this bike. So then we ventured out and rode around the neighborhood a little bit, and it seemed like he had gotten the hang of it pretty quickly. And so I really saw that as a ministry on anything that feels too big at first. So the first day we got this bike, it seemed enormous. He couldn't handle it. He didn't know really what he was doing. It seemed too big for him. It seemed like he wasn't ready yet, even though he had been riding his little dirt bike for years prior to that point and had mastered the dirt bike. When he got a newer, bigger, more sophisticated vehicle, when he first got on it, he was wobbly. And, understandably so. But then, after a little bit of practice, he got the hang of it, and he was rolling like nothing had changed. And I just saw that as wow, there's so many times when I felt like a situation was too big for me, a room was too sophisticated for me, an opportunity was too much for me and for who I was at this point, for who I had become to this point, that I wasn't ready yet. But every single time I get an opportunity that seems too big or too advanced or, bigger than me, once I step into it and I have the opportunity, I always rise to the challenge, whether it's a speaking engagement or a coaching client or a corporate organization. I'm trying to think of some other things that I've been offered. A media opportunity. Whenever I find myself feeling like this is too big for me, and then I get a chance to lean into it, I always rise to the challenge. And so I just wanted to share that. Hopefully it inspires you to see something that you may be avoiding or maybe telling yourself you're not big enough for yet. Maybe you just need time to practice, and the only time you can really master it or assure yourself or convince yourself that you are ready is by stepping into it and doing it. So whether that is the next level of job, if you're moving from coordinator to manager, from manager to director, from director to VP, and you're wondering, can you really hack it at that next level? You've been preparing for this at the level you're at, just like Connor had been preparing for that big adult bike by riding his little dirt kiddie bike. This is just the next level, and it may seem a little big at first, but once you get some practice, you'll be fine. So I encourage you to seize the opportunity, even if it feels too big for your skills right now. It feels too big for your brand right now. It feels too big for your heart right now. Maybe it's a relationship. I don't know what you're struggling with or what opportunities have hit you that you may not feel ready for, but if it comes your way, the only way to assure yourself you are ready is to try. So with that, I am going to step into this what feels like too big of a challenge of podcasting daily for a month. I'm going to step into it and just see. Who knows? This podcast has brought me so much just to share with you, frankly, in terms of relationships, friends, clients. It's been, I would say, arguably one of the best things I've done for my brand and for my community. Just being able to connect with people on a regular basis and just deepen that connection. It's there has been no other medium that's given me the returns that this has. And so why not double down on that? Why not dig into that? Why not go all into that, at least for a time? And you know how I feel about experiments. Experiments never hurt anyone. And so will I do it for a year? Probably not, but I can do anything for 30 days. So we shall see how this goes. Hit me up on social media if you're listening, and if you have any ideas for podcasts, because I'm sure I will run out of some at some point. But again, maybe not, and maybe this is just a great opportunity to be in the moment, to be authentic, and to share what's really on my heart and mind. With that, I'm going to go. I think I'm going to go draw myself a bath or something. Do something self-care-ish. Because tomorrow's a busy day and I have a busy week ahead. So I will talk to you tomorrow, right? Because this is a daily thing now. All right. See you soon.